The Queendom of Maravaun has been called many things over her lifetime. The last breath of the forgotten dragons, the iron of the Greenlands Alliance, and by some as a relic of a time best forgotten and left behind. You cannot truly appreciate what something is, though, until you understand the events that gave it birth. Which is why I would like to delve into some of the history of my home, and to bring you all along for the journey. Let's begin, shall we? They say there was a realm before this one, a place that had grown old and nearly collapsed beneath its own weight. It was a place of darkness, ruled by cold sorceries that defied time and the grave alike. Some scholars called this place Mool. At the height of its power, the priest-kings may have been able to stand against the Radiant Ones. With their grip on power fading, Mool was destroyed by the ancient dragons. From that time on, it was referred to only as the Ashen Empire. Once the old cities had burned, the Radiant Ones began assembling a new order out of the ashes. They claimed territories, established lairs, and made themselves comfortable in their new homes. What they hadn't expected were the pilgrims. In Mool, the common folk were rarely seen, and to be heard by the High Consulate, a town would send someone to make their case. These speakers tended to be forceful and erudite, able to convey needs in the space of a few breaths when need be. Their rulers had changed, but the folk of the dale and the river saw no reason the old ways wouldn't work with their new overlords. They didn't at first. Many of the Radiant felt threatened or believed the pilgrims had been sent as some kind of trick. Others were indifferent, as they had destroyed Mool to take a new land, not to rule over its people. It was the dragon Bathshere who first turned her ears to the plight of the people, and when she saw the challenges were too great for her to grapple with alone, she called a meeting of the Radiant to discuss what would become of what was now their nation. Had that first Radiant Assembly been confined only to the dragons, it's doubtful that much would have been done. Tired from their battles and eager to rest, many would have closed themselves off and left the people to deal with their own troubles. Bathshere recognized the skill of the pilgrims, though, and she asked them to attend as her guests. While some in the assembly jeered, the pilgrims made themselves heard. 100 generations of speaking truth to power had made them compelling, and while they didn't melt every heart, they did awaken the sympathies of the council. That was the beginning of the Tempora Draconis, and the height of the Radiant Age. The Radiant Ones possessed great strength and power when they first swept over the lands that came to be known as Maravaun, and it was that power that allowed them to form the foundation of a new era. From the battles at the Obsidian Mount, where the black dragon Phyrezian slew the last of Mool's immortal legions, to the purification of the burning delta, the great dragons planted new seeds among the old destruction. It was not the Radiant Ones' duty to tend those seeds, however. To bear that burden, they appointed stewards. Chosen for skill, loyalty, and strength of purpose, the stewards became the caretakers of the new nation. While the Radiant Ones still ruled, the day-to-day doings were left to these chosen people. Warriors, scholars, judges, and caretakers, they were also the ones who sounded the alarm if the Radiant Ones were ever truly needed. For a time, there was peace in Maravaun. The old gods and nameless hungers of Mool had faded to little more than echoes, their palaces reduced to nothing more than ruins. New cities were built, and generations of children were born into the comfort and safety beneath the dragon's wings. But dragons hold grudges, and poison can steep for centuries as they wait for an opportunity to take their vengeance. So it was with Phyrezian. A potent warrior and master strategist, she'd been instrumental in bringing the lands to heal. Filled with pride, she resented how Bathshere was regarded by their brethren and loved by the people of their lands. She saw the compassion of the great red dragon as a weakness, and she nursed that envy at her bosom within the Obsidian Mount where she had declared her seat of power. In time, Bathshere took a consort whom she loved beyond all others. A lesser dragon, he was vulnerable in ways the Radiant Ones were not. Phyrezian brewed a potent poison steeped in her envy and spite, and had it slipped into Bathshere's larder by a loyal servant. The longer the poison sat, the sweeter it tasted, and the more potent it would become. The poison never made it to Bathshere's table, though. Rather, it was mistaken for a treat by her steward's children. They shared the small pot, laughing and smiling until it had all been eaten. Then, when the heady rush began to fade, the agony began. Their suffering was great as the poison was slow, and the screams and cries for mercy echoed down the halls of Bathshere's stronghold. Even with all of her power, there was nothing she could do to save them. That was the beginning of the end. While Phyrezian may have found support in feeling she deserved more, the Radiant Ones had grown fond of their stewards. They had become sacrosanct. The Black Dragon's protest that the poison was not meant for them fell on deaf ears. In the end, she was bound within her own fortress, the ancient seals of Mool enhanced and empowered by the breath and blood of her kin. The earth shook, and venom scorched the countryside for miles, but the mount held strong. In time, Phyrezian's struggles faded, and she fell into long sleep. Though punishment was delivered, the death of Bathshere's stewards signaled the end of the time of peace. The dragons had seen the spite, the cruelty, and the slow slide into debasement that had befallen Mool before them, and they knew they were not immune to the same fate. Another assembly was called, and for the first time since the founding, every member of the Radiant Ones, save for Phyrezian, of course, was present. Every steward was in attendance, as well as hundreds of pilgrims who had come from every corner of Maravaun to attend. Though the pilgrims begged, each pleading with all the skill and wit they had, the assembly all agreed it was time for Maravaun to fly on its own. Though they had forged this nation, it was time for them to go. They left in ones and twos. Asgard, with the color and temper of a stormy sky, flew over the western horizon, never to be seen again. Nacala, the deep green of fertile forests, slipped beneath the wildwood. Rivard vanished into a night darker than even his shadowy hide, and Vin let the evening tide simply carry her away. Before they departed, each of the Radiant Ones gave a part of their power to their stewards, a gift to help them keep the lands guarded. Bathshere was the last to go. She stood before the red stone of the palace that had once been the seat of power to fell priest-kings, and she spoke to Isuza, her steward. She filled her with fire and told her to tend her future children well. They would all bear the mark of the dragon, once baptized in her breath. Her final act as a ruler was when Bathshere poured out her breath into the great pool before the palace. She poured all of her love, her rage, her fear, and her hope into that single breath, and it burns before the palace and Ember Throne to this day. Bathshere retreated to the bowels of the palace and into the living rock below. She would always be there, she said, for Isuza and her new children. All of that happened near to 700 years ago now. The children of the great dragons still dwell among us, but there are few living now for whom the Radiant Ones are more than a story. Those of us with dragon's breath in our veins know the truth of these tales. The gift of the Radiant Ones is very much alive, and though it has been tested, Maravaun still endures. If you enjoyed this exploration of the Queendom of Maravaun, like the video and subscribe to the channel. If you have a question, or if there are other parts of Evora you'd like us to explore, leave those in the comments below. Also, take a look at the video description to find our Facebook page, as well as our Ko-fi and Patreon links, if you'd like to support us.